Well, what do you say we start, Bruce?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Great.
Welcome, everybody, to SCORE Westchester's webinar, Using LinkedIn to Grow Your Business. Before we start the presentation, let me just tell you a little bit about SCORE Westchester. SCORE Westchester's goal is to foster vibrant small business through free mentoring and education. We serve our small business community by providing confidential business mentoring, webinars, and hopefully soon in-person workshops, and extensive online educational resources that we offer our clients. Our clients are mostly startups and established businesses. We have at SCORE Westchester over 50 volunteer business mentors with wide-ranging industry experiences and areas of expertise to draw on. You can reach us at 914-267-6570 or westchester.score.org. A little bit about today's webinar and how it will work virtually. Everyone will be muted. As we go, please submit your text questions and comments using the Q&A, not the chat button. The chat button will not be used, should not be used at all. We will look to answer as many questions as possible during the presentation, and we will break during the presentation and also after the presentation to reply to these questions, and we will answer as many as can be done. Our presenter today is Bruce Siegel. Bruce is an experienced marketing professional with 25 years experience in large financial services companies and smaller firms before he became president of Marketing Sense in 2010. He has recently trained over 150 clients and 50 professional groups on LinkedIn and writes frequently on LinkedIn for clients. Bruce has a BA from Yale and an MBA from Stanford Business School. He's lived in the New York area with his family since 1987. In his spare time, Bruce enjoys long recreational bike rides in northern Westchester and beyond. I will now turn this over to Bruce, who will continue.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, speaking of bike rides, it doesn't seem like a great day for a bike ride, so we can talk about LinkedIn. And I wanted to start by saying that I was actually a LinkedIn pioneer, one of the first million people to be on the platform over 15 years ago, right after it started. And I've been a passionate user ever since. LinkedIn has had a revival of sorts since the pandemic. But with that frequent use, it kind of can come a laissez-faire attitude where people just go on and do what they've always done And I'm here today to spark you out of that. I'm going to present a number of options and then come up, hopefully you can at the end come up with 1 to 3 things that you can do in the next 30 or 60 days to build your business using LinkedIn. And this is particularly important as it does seem like we are able to emerge from the pandemic right now. And so LinkedIn can be an important part of that reemergence. So more specifically, what we're going to do before you can start to be really active on LinkedIn, you have to have a really strong profile. That's really the foundation. And we'll start by talking about that, something that I'm really passionate about. Then we're going to focus next on the visibility, how you use LinkedIn to build both your personal and your business brands. And then turning on to the business development side of how you can leverage your network and build both with existing contacts and new business connections. But before we start, I want to just bring up the first poll to get a sense of the audience. A lot of you out there today, I want to get a sense of where you stand with LinkedIn. So Peter, can you bring up the first poll? Usually I get a lot of, there's a thing here for advanced beginner. There's no advanced beginner, but that's where I think, sort of advanced beginner, early intermediate, that's sort of where a lot of the people who attend my sessions are at. So we'll see how it shakes out this morning. Okay, so now I think we're ready to show the results. Okay, good. So we have a lot of beginners, intermediates. Love to hear from the expert in the audience. Hopefully you'll still find something that will be of value to you. But this is very helpful. So just to, before we go to the profile, just to sort of level set a little bit, LinkedIn now has 750 million members. I mean, that's a large percentage of people on the globe, and in the US, about 200 million, so very, very active. And the interesting thing is that about half of these people are on LinkedIn in any given month, and that number is increasing. We also know that since the pandemic, people are spending more time on LinkedIn. And I think about a year ago, even some key decision makers, where they didn't know what else to do, so they were on LinkedIn. So the question is, are those targets for your businesses still here? And just to level set, this is generally a platform where businesses are interacting with other businesses. The business consumer is more secondary. So what we see with all this activity is when you go to your home page feed, which we'll go to in a minute, that is very crowded, lots of people competing, as well as your LinkedIn inbox, your message box will have lots of messages in it. So that's what's happening as you go. And so in order in this environment, in this crowded environment, you want to make sure that your profile is really strong, that it stands out from the crowd. There's about 10 things that we're going to go over right now. And I'll just preview these quickly, and then I'll take a break, go over to LinkedIn, show you those some of those things, and then come back and continue with the presentation. Many of you, particularly as beginners, you probably didn't realize that you have an opportunity, but right now near the top of your profile, next to your picture and your name, it will default to your current title. But what you want to do is come up with an example of a professional headline. I'm sorry, you want to come up with your elevator speech in roughly 150 characters. So it's more than just your name and your title, but it's really just as if you were going to a networking meeting. It's kind of like what you do, and that's really critical, and many, many people miss that. Right below the there's an opportunity for a featured section where you can add visuals. Right now, LinkedIn about 2 months ago just introduced where your profile picture is. They just introduced something called cover stories. And that is a way that you can do a little video on yourself in 20 seconds, 30 seconds or less. And it's a great way to introduce yourself. Needless to say, you should have a professional profile photo. Right in back of your photo, there's an opportunity for a banner image. So that would be something that either shows your company's logo, your company in action, what your tagline is, or just a visual that connotes what makes you special as a company. You can also borrow images from your website. Right now, because I know this is a lot of talking, I'm going to go switch over to LinkedIn itself. You can see an example of a profile. Richard, do you see LinkedIn right now?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to jump over to my profile here and illustrate some of these things. So the first thing, the professional headline. So I do have my title, President of Marketing Sense, but I also how I help people. I help them stand out in this crowded online world. I write LinkedIn profiles. I do training. I help people with their marketing messaging. Then there's also, this is my background, and I had someone design this for me. So it has my tagline, a little thing on my company, and a little image that shows my brand. Right here, my profile has a little orange circle around it, which means that if you were to click on it, you would see a little video as myself, video introduction of myself. So we'll go through these in a minute. This is when we go back to the slides, just this is where you're finding these special new features that have offered. We'll go back to providing services in a minute. And here you can see my about section, where I start with a really provocative question to draw people in, because as you can see, my whole about section, my whole summary of myself is not visible until I click on see more. So that's what I want people to do. So I have to be really intriguing in this first 3 lines. Now, one thing that's really important to note is that a lot of people are looking at LinkedIn on a phone right now. And so it's very visual. There's not necessarily a lot of opportunity to read a lot of copy. They may be skimming. So those visuals are really, really important. And on the phone, probably just even less is is visible. So I have to really make sure that I grab them in the first line or two. Here's my featured section with different visuals. I can carousel through. I have examples. This is my favorite. This is the last time that I presented in person. And this is actually someone who wrote a post about how great my presentation was. So this really is sort of like a third-party endorsement. And then going down my activity, my about me, different sections of my profile that are important. So with that as an introduction, it's a little bit of too big of a group to see if there's specific questions, but I'm going to jump back to the presentation right now. So hopefully you've been able to see some of these things. We've kind of covered, we'll go back to this in the following slides, but through the call to open. It's important, some people write a really terrific about section, and then next to their current position, their current company, they don't bother to describe what they're doing. And so that's really important that you do so, because again, as I said, people are skimming these profiles. So they may skim through your about and then focus on your current position. So you want to make sure you have a description there. Also, how are people trying to search for you? Are you a digital marketing specialist? Do you sell real estate in Rybrook, New York? And so those keywords are really important. I had breezed over something called, it's relatively new, called the service overview, which is a way that as a consultant, if you are a consultant, you can indicate what services are that you offer. And so it's another little piece of visibility that's available to you. The other thing that you should have, and we'll get into this more detail, is a link to your company. So you need to have a company page. I'm showing the individual page. And as well as there's something that you can do to set up a LinkedIn URL that will make you more visible. A lot of us live in Westchester. We're very committed to the community. We may have a volunteer activity. For example, United Way, you may be, head of the local chapter or head of the, or on the board of the local Chamber of Commerce. And sometimes these connection points are really important when you're seeking to network with people. So I definitely encourage you to highlight those, as well as if you have an additional certification, in addition to your formal education, have received an award, or are fluent in another language. So in summary, the LinkedIn profile is not a bio. It's not something you copy from your website. It's not totally informal either. So I like the catch-all phrase, it's professionally personal. I'm just going to take a sip of water here before we move on with some more visual illustrations. So the featured section that I showed before, that has, and this is about a year old, and there's many options. You can highlight a post as I had done. You can highlight an article that you published on LinkedIn. You can link to just about anything, your website, if you have a YouTube video, that will show very, very well. And so this is just a lot of options that LinkedIn made available. And it was a while ago, it was now over a year ago, but people haven't really, taken advantage of that. Many of the people that I work with just never got around to doing a featured section, as well as any document. I could take a section of this presentation and post it as part of my featured section, just to show people, what I do. And those can be PDFs, PowerPoints, Word, any pictures, any kind of media. So when you set up this featured section, the first and second image is really important, because as you see on the phone, this is the phone view, only 1.5 images are visible. So we talked a little bit about the background image, the about, and then creating something intriguing. I loved what this woman did. She's an IP attorney, and what her image ties, it's the Berlin Spy Museum, so it ties to her about. So it's all of a sudden, rather than just being another, sort of run-of-the-mill lawyer, she's about spying and intrigue and, her interests. And so it just really drew me in. And I really want to click on the see more. This is a different approach to a professional headline. She's taken the approach of, rather than kind of phrases, which is what I do, she has just more of the keywords. So this is what she wants to be searched on. It's not my preference, but it is certainly something that many people do. So the video cover stories is, as I said, this is with the orange circle. This is how you know that I have one. This is my daughter with a white circle, does not have one. And I'm going to ask Peter now to distribute the example via chat of a really good video cover story. Unfortunately, we can't show it. We tested it yesterday, and we can't switch from my talking over to the YouTube. It doesn't seem to work well, but you can look in the chat and listen to that at your convenience. And here's an example. A colleague of mine put some examples together. This is just one that I thought was particularly good. Some other features is, a lot of people say Seagal rather than Seagull. So if you have a name like mine that's hard to pronounce, you can now put a little audio announcement. And again, everyone's into not reading everything. So this is just another little way, in addition to the video cover story, to sort of personalize yourself so people can hear your voice a little bit. There's also an opportunity to indicate your pronouns of choice. LinkedIn either has choices for you, or you can select your own. So that's, I think it's, again, we're people interacting. We're not just like kind of resumes. So that's not what the point of LinkedIn is. So with that, I am actually going to pause and see if there's any questions. Richard?
Okay. First question, I've got a few different people asking, Bruce, will the presentation be available? And if so, how can they access it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share this. SCORE has the PDF, and so that would be, up to SCORE how they want to make it available. So, Richard, I don't know if or Peter, if there's someone that they can email or whatever. But I'm happy. And the other thing you can do is you can also just connect with me on LinkedIn. Bruce Siegel. I'm the only one of the few Siegels spelled the way it is, and I'll just flip back. Also, I think I have right here. You can see my email address, bruce@marketingsense2.com.
There will be a email follow-up to all attendees with the presentation too.
Okay.
Okay, did everybody hear that? Bruce, you heard that?
From Peter? That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, Bruce, here's a question. I'm a self-help author. Every time I go on LinkedIn, it seems like everybody's selling something, and that's a big turnoff to me.
Right.
How do I market my book? It's on overcoming procrastination and coaching services without sounding like everybody else. And how do I get people to notice me without paying for advertising on LinkedIn, which I've heard is very expensive?
Okay, great question. And that's what we're going to be covering in the rest of the presentation. But I guess what I would just say as a prelude to my response is, as in marketing my services, I've always been in working with clients, I've always really focused on, sort of find your niche and find your little tribe on LinkedIn. And so what are the groups? And we're going to go through that. What are the people that you want to connect with? Who can you identify 100 targeted people that you can connect with one-on-one in a very non-salesy kind of way? And then that can be the beginning of your marketing on LinkedIn. And all of that can be done, without any advertising, even with just a basic account. And we'll go through some of those options. It's an excellent question. I sympathize with you. There is a lot of people out there on LinkedIn. A lot of stuff out there. But my message is that there still is an opportunity to forge those individual connections.
Okay, this is not a question, but here's a comment from Sophie. I'm the self-described expert, and I've already learned something. So that's okay. Very good.
That's good. Right. Well, they say quit while you're ahead. So
right.
I think we'll
we won't let you rest on your laurels.
Right.
How do you link something to the featured section?
I'm sorry?
How do you link something to the featured section?
Yeah, we didn't really go through that in detail, but when you go to there's a button to create a featured section. Or if you already have one, there's a button, a little plus sign to add a section, and then it will give you that little option that I think I showed in that little black gray box. It'll give you those 4 options, and then you just paste the link in, and then you get to see a preview, and you can assess whether the preview looks right. So for example, YouTube always looks really good. Websites, you really have to check first. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to reach out to me and be happy to email or do a short call. So.
Okay, Bruce, from Astrid, I do work in English and Spanish. How is LinkedIn in Spanish? Is it as big as in English? And any recommendations to increase in Spanish?
Sorry, to increase the Spanish usage or to leverage the fact that she's...
To leverage the fact, I believe it's to leverage the fact that she needs Spanish help.
Right, that she offers Spanish, Spanish fluent. Well, certainly the languages to add that, certainly highlight that in your professional headline and in your about section. And then there is also the option, and I don't obviously know you, but there is actually the option to have a profile entirely in Spanish. So I've certainly seen those, and I think that I don't know specifically the usage in Latin America or in Spain, but I do feel like it's all over the world right now. And in fact, I know there's someone that I follow who's a LinkedIn expert. I don't know why I follow him, but it's intriguing, in Colombia, Peru. So they're definitely, are people out there.
Okay, I'll give our last question for this period here, Bruce. When I see someone at a virtual conference and want to connect with them, how do I get them to answer my message to them? I have a paid account. It seems very hard to get a reply and connect.
I mean, I think if you have actually met someone, it's just like Richard, we've interacted, we haven't, met, but I think that the better approach would be to send them a connect request. And then when you send the connect request, there's an option to personalize it and say, so what I do when I'm on one of these breakout rooms, I'll say, hey, Astrid, it was great to be in the breakout room with you. I've noticed we had some connections in common, or, I noticed that you've done, work in Argentina, which is really a passion of mine. I thought we'd start, we'd make a, connect here on LinkedIn and begin a dialogue. So then you sort of put that out there, see if they respond, very non-threatening. And then if the person does connect with you, what you don't do is you don't follow up and immediately. You sort of let it sit for a week or two and then say, hey, we connected, a couple of weeks ago. I'd love to start a dialogue. I'd love to send you my latest article, set up a call, whatever. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, let's go on to the second.
All right, I'm gonna plug along with ability, if that's okay, and we can hopefully have time for questions at the end. So in this section, we're really talking about your brand, both your business and your personal brand, and making sure that you stay visible to that network. It's a tough time as we're coming out of COVID. Everyone's in a different place, but the last thing that you want to do is just be one of those people that just gets, off the grid. You want to keep yourself on the grid, and LinkedIn offers really great opportunities to do that. And we're going to go through some of those right now. A lot of people think that they can be on LinkedIn by just liking posts. And I think my message to you, in part in this chart, is that, that takes low effort, but it's going to have low impact. And so what I'm trying to get anyone who I talk to about LinkedIn is sort of move up this hierarchy. So start really interacting, commenting, showing, and not just say great article, but really adding your own point of view into that. And then hopefully actually posting, and we're going to go through these in a lot more detail. That's where you're going to start to have more impact. We're also going to talk about articles, which I have found to be very effective in establishing the thought leadership of yourself as a professional and of your company. There is a new feature right now where you comment and then immediately it will give you the option to share that comment as a post. So, and that's an interesting option because, again, at least in commenting, you're giving your point of view. Where I put sharing down in this lower left is when people just see someone's post and they just share it without a comment. To me, that clutters up LinkedIn. And so what I'm encouraging you all to do is sort of move up, as I said, this hierarchy, really focus on adding value. What value are you adding to the dialogue as a professional? So that's kind of the overview. And then we're going to go, into more detail now about posting, and it is a more crowded world. Just remind me if someone is unsure about how to start a post, let me know and send a question, and we'll take a break and go back, into LinkedIn and to show that. I'm never sure how familiar people are, but it used to be just a time where you could go on LinkedIn and say, hey, great article. And that's not really the case anymore. So you really have to be, inspiring, have a real insight, as I said, authentic, be your authentic self. And this is hard. You can even be vulnerable on LinkedIn. And I realize, for those of us who've been working for many decades, back in the the 2000s, 15 years ago, the last thing you would want to be is vulnerable, but that's now okay. And you really have to have, something really striking about your post if you want it to do really good. Some people say, well, what do I post about? Well, as the person who, questioned a little while ago, there are speaking events. You might be speaking like I'm speaking, or you might just be attending, and just to be great to see people. And particularly, as you start to go to see people in person, say that you're really happy to go to that get together the other evening and just post a picture of that. Obviously, you're publishing what's happening with your clients, what's happening with your company. People do publish news, but if you do, make sure that you have a point of view on the news. Just to say, hey, the stock market's having a down week, that really isn't a very good post. And I'm really kind of tired of them. Anyway, and then what's really been interesting in the last year or two is if you can find a way to, since home and business have intermingled, and I'm actually in my home office right now, surprise, surprise. So if you can find a way of integrating home and business, your work and your business, and find a spin on that, that can work out, really well. There was someone about a year ago I saw who she talked about how she distracted her daughter, and how she made her work not interesting to her daughter, so that the daughter would go off and do her own thing. Here's something that I did just to show you. My daughter's much older. My daughter just graduated from college. And what I did there, in addition to just posting a picture of her over on the left, is I said, hey, this is an opportunity for me to offer to anyone who wants a discount on a sort of an entry-level LinkedIn profile. And just to say that, in addition to celebrating a graduation, having a compelling LinkedIn presence is, an overlooked step. And you can see now it's up to, but if you go at the bottom here, it's now up to over 6,000 views, over 100 comments. Most of them were just congratulations, but a couple people did have substantive things. I did have someone who contacted me, not about their child, but about their own LinkedIn profile. And we had to have a proposal in front of that person. So this is just an interesting way of, combining and you really have to kind of think about it. What's your comfort level? But in this case, I was able to successfully combine personal and business. You can congratulate yourself, like this fellow David Cohn did a couple of years ago, but not too much. If you're just completely saying, constantly saying, I placed number 2 in the X ranking, that's going to get really boring. So what I say to people is, you could do these promotional posts 20% of the time. Most of the time you want to provide real insight, but it's also okay to, another sort of in between is the collaborative. So rather than saying, I won this award, you could say, well, it was great to be on a team that did X, Y, Z, or I just put on this event for a nonprofit and I really appreciated working with my colleague, Richard Feldman. So there's kind of like an in-between there that I think works really well. There's a lot of, I realize this is just a lot, but that's in a crowded world, posting has become complicated. So that you can do, historically what people had done was text with then a link that would then create an image. That's kind of gone a little bit out of favor. So what is better to do is text with an image or a document attached. And then if you need to have a link, you can put that in the first comment. About a year or two ago, there was a move to plain text emails, messages. So you sort of set it up, no images, but you set it up with kind of creating a suspense. Hiring this person, everyone told me it would be the wrong decision, ... see more. And needless to say, this person did really well. And so there's a way that you can craft your post so that it creates a suspense and then causes people to click on see more. And then by clicking on see more, LinkedIn interprets that as something called engagement. And so if they see that people are clicking on it, they'll actually bump to the top of the feed. You can do videos, record a little video of yourself on your phone, as this person did for a job announcement. The length of the posts, you can actually do almost like a little mini article, up to 1,300 characters, which is about 2 to 3 short paragraphs. And there's actually a rumor going around that they're going to more than double that. So you really could do, a pretty full post about and talk about something for a while. So what you want to do, not just post when you feel like it, but we'll come up with some kind of rough schedule to say, hey, I'm going to at least try to post once a week. Or if that's not possible for you, at least once a month, because there is now, so much activity on LinkedIn. You do need to be out there relatively regularly. There's also a way, and we can go back the next time we take a break and go back to LinkedIn. You can tag your colleagues with this little @ symbol. So that's a really good way to give recognition to others. Then they'll see in their feed that they've been highlighted, and so they're more likely to interact and comment and share. You also should, we're going to go into this in a little more detail later, so I'm not going to dwell on this. Hashtags, for example, that hashtag that I used on the last post was around recruitment, LinkedIn profiles. And then there's options for posting. It's not just other things I haven't referred to. One that I really like is create a poll. So just like we've done a poll earlier, you can do a poll on LinkedIn, and those tend to do really, really well. You can also, through this celebrated occasion, you can give credit to a colleague who did a really good job, either an employee or just someone that you're working with. This screenshot is something on stories, which is something that LinkedIn borrowed from other social media. I'm not sure how successful it is, but it is another option that's available for you. And then you want to think about how are your colleagues going to help you with posting. If you're part of a company and you have employees, you can let those employees know as soon as you send out an update from your page. Or for those of us who are in business for ourselves, there have now sprung up little groups, informal groups, where you help each other, you let each other know when you've posted, and then you comment on each other's post. Then the other thing, I'm sorry to go back here, is you need to then be available. So I recommend that you do your own posting, so that then when people comment, you're available to comment on their comments and sort of keep the dialogue going. And then last, and here's an example just down here of someone who used this pod concept very effectively. And then you want to, sort of keep track of how you're doing with your posts, how many views, how many comments you're getting, monitor that and adjust it. I use just a simple spreadsheet. I post once a week and I record how that's doing, and then adjust as I go forward. There's also a tool called Shield Analytics, and that is an add-on to Chrome that will give you really good reporting on how your posts are doing. Peter, I neglected before to do the poll, but why don't we just take a break and do a quick poll and see if people are posting on LinkedIn? So this will give us a sense of, where the audience has to go. I predict we're gonna probably end up with some nevers and on occasions. Right. I think we should close it. Maybe just see what we got. Oh yeah, this group has a ways to go. Well, there's opportunity here. So yeah, so I think just to get started, I find that when I work with people, just getting that first post out there can be like a block, and then you'll be able to, kind of do more. But it's not, you don't have to think that like your whole personal brand, sort of relies, it's not like the 1990s, it's a Super Bowl ad. That's not a LinkedIn post. I mean, you can just get your feet wet and get started, and people in your network will acknowledge you for that. I also alluded to articles being these are a longer posts, if you will. They have a unique URL. It's a public URL, so you can use it almost like a blog. And what I do is I send out, when I publish an article on LinkedIn, I send out individual LinkedIn messages to members of my valued connections through LinkedIn. And that's a great way for me to stay in touch with people. And it also, because LinkedIn is looking for early engagement in my article, so that if I publish at 8 o'clock in the morning, then by sending out these messages between 8 and 9, so then by 9, I already have comments on the article, and then LinkedIn boosts that and recognizes that. So it's my own little, kind of thing that I've done for the last number of years. And not that many people do it. I've shared it. I'm happy to share it, but I think it's a good little thing. And they're always trying new things. There's a newsletter. I'm just gonna that you can publish if you publish often. But I'm just gonna move on because I think we're kind of getting already to 12:40. There's something new called creator mode, which is just simplistically, it's a way of reordering your profile so that the featured section is first, and the activity is also further up, and it's expanded so that more of your posts show when I go to look at your profile. Also, it's encouraging your network to follow you rather than connect with you. So I had it on for a couple of weeks. I just turned it off. So you add hashtags to help make yourself more visible, growing your audience, as I said. And then we're not going to have time, but if you are live streaming on LinkedIn, you'll have a little banner in back that's live now. So I don't think it's actually for this audience now that I look at the poll results, but just to make you aware for the the experts and intermediates out there, this is an option you might want to consider. So we've been talking earlier, we talked about individual pages. You also need, as a solopreneur, I recommend a company page. Here's a page of a colleague of mine that runs a tutoring business. Hope you'll all follow her. Her company is a great service that she offers. And what it does is it's another place to market your business. If you have employees, it helps you engage those employees and helping them to market your business. It also improves the look of your personal profile by having your logo show. And also you can invite any of your connections to follow your company page. So you can actually build your network quite quickly. As I said, we're not going to have a lot of time to go through that, but they've really enhanced this capability. So you can show open jobs, you can have videos on your company, you can even run events through your company and have polls, advertising, registration, and notification about events. So it's almost like LinkedIn has a whole event feature, and they're really doing a lot to make this a lot better. There's this My Company tab that's being introduced. You'll be able to soon publish an article from your company page. So it used to be if you have trouble with people authoring things, so this way you can have an outsider write an article, you review it, and then publish it from your company page, and then reshare it from your personal page. Here's an example of the different tabs that are available. So they really have improved this. Okay, so Richard, if it's okay, I'm just sensitive to the time, so I'm just going to plow through without pausing for questions.
Okay, well, at the end, we'll try to get back to a few of these questions.
Yeah. I think that's better. I want to make sure we at least get through the content.
Right.
That I had planned. So in this section, this is really sort of for a small business owner. this is where the rubber meets the road. Well, how do I know this is really worth my time? And so what I'm, going to do now is show you some ways to, build your network, build a new business pipeline. It usually does take some time. And I kind of divided it into 3 different, sort of use cases. One, first for people that are, but it's really the tools will be applicable to anybody. But first, sort of focusing on, well, what if I'm just, I've come to SCORE and I'm contemplating a business. And the first thing that I want to make sure is that you use those hashtags to build your expertise. So there might be a keyword term, and that could be very specific. Like, for example, people are talking about hybrid events right now, which means an event that's offered both in person and with an option to zoom in. So you could have a piece of software that you're offering in that space. And so then you plug in hybrid events, and then you follow that hashtag, and then on your feed, you'll start to see articles and posts about hybrid events. You could also just do something very broad like digital marketing, and that has something like 300 people or 3 million people are following that. And then you can start to follow people that you admire in the space where you're thinking of starting a business. So in other words, you'll start to see on your homepage people that you would aspire to and see what they're talking about. So it's a way of educating yourself on the business sector that you're thinking of joining. The next thing you should do is join LinkedIn groups. So these are places where people that share common professional interests, hang out, if you will, like a listserv. So here's something for event planners. Here's something for inventors. And then another type of group would be for alumni. So the idea is to, first join the groups, and then, kind of in the beginning, just listen, then start to engage, and make comments, and then do your own posts over time, and then eventually start to connect with people. And there is even an option where you can send a message to a member of a group, even if you're not connections. You can do, I think, 15 of those a month. So this is a great way to kind of get your feet wet in a sector, if that's what you're thinking about doing. Also, it's a great way, maybe there are past colleagues who can help you with the sector you're thinking about that. And so most people within LinkedIn just search Richard Feldman, Bruce Siegel, and that little magnifying glass up top. But in fact, if you just click within that magnifying glass, you get this whole world of search that comes out at you. And if we have time at the end, I want to make sure that I show that to you. And then from there, you can say, well, I worked at Pitney Bowes many, many years ago. So, Pitney Bowes, first connection, used to work there, past company. And here's a reminder of people that I know that are or were in the, sort of mailing, B2B, kind of packaging space. So it's a great reminder of who I know that I could then reconnect with. Then moving on to startups, as you start to, build your presence, build your brand, you're in a startup mode. I know probably a lot of you, including me, receive random invites from people you don't know. And people typically either accept and ignore. And my message to you is that this is the time when someone invites you where you can have a dialogue with them. So you can either, with someone you can accept the invite, but message them. Use that as an opportunity to continue the dialogue. Because once they become one of your 2,000 or 1,000 connections, you may not have the opportunity to nurture them. And then, or you can ignore them clearly if they're not of interest, or you can message them before accepting. And what I do is, if someone, so that looks interesting, I'll send them a message and I'll say, hey, Richard, I typically don't, connect with people until we've had an opportunity to speak on the phone. love to hear how you heard of me, love to, set a time to connect. Here's my Calendly link. And then I'm able to establish dialogues that way. I got an inquiry from an executive coach some years ago. Then through this method, got a phone call with her. Then that turned into an in-person coffee. Then she invited me to be a webinar presenter. Then she said, well, if you're presenting at my webinars, I really need to hire you to do LinkedIn for me. So she hired me and she said, well, I'd like you to help my friend. And so this, really does work. Other thing that startups can do is identify potential partners and customers. So here's an example of where I put in hybrid events and see who are my second connections who are involved in the hybrid event space. So there's someone on this list that works for BlackRock putting on events. So they could be a potential person that I could contact. And you can contact them about your product, but you could also just contact them through LinkedIn to have a conversation about the hybrid event space. You can also try everything that I've outlined so far is available on the free program. But now I'm going to recommend something that there is a monthly fee of either $60 or $80 a month, and allows you to send a message to someone you don't know. And it's called an in-mail. And here's some guidelines for doing that. Just keep it, it's not salesy, as we were discussing earlier. Keep it short, simple, conversational. It's great if you can personalize. I sent one recently to someone who I was thinking was one of the, went to Bucknell at a time where not many women went there. And so I tied it into the fact of my daughter being a senior. And so it just, really got a response from the person. And inviting a genuine dialogue. Think about your subject line. That's tremendously important. That's what the person will see. And remember that this is just the first step. So don't expect to get clients, but you can establish a dialogue. I was doing some work for an inventor a year or so ago, and he was looking for people in the sports industry. And through using this, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Sales Navigator in a minute, but through good in-mail messages, I established some really great contacts for him. If you're not ready for the premium program, you can also just send connection requests to people. And you would do a much shorter message. But again, something, as I outlined before, just, kind of casual and not salesy. The one thing you have to be mindful of with connection requests is don't do 50 or 100 a day, because LinkedIn is clamping down on that and they're flagging those accounts. So you can do this kind of method via connection requests, but not too many. And then for more mature businesses, you can step up your searching. You can do what's called, in addition to searching on people, you can search based on companies. And when I go to this law firm, this really growing, terrific law firm in White Plains, I see that there's a little bar there, 22 employees. So I would click on that, and then it would take me to the 22 employees, and I could either see, who I knew, or if someone was a second connection, maybe I could reach out to them and say, we know these people in common. Yale University is a company on LinkedIn, but it's also a university. And so as such, they have this tab called alumni, which allows me to search the years that I went to Yale, and it will pop up based on certain criteria. For example, if I'm visiting my daughter in San Francisco, it will pop up the people who went to Yale, who live in San Francisco and attended at the same time as me, and even people that are first connections. So I could, remind myself of who do I know in San Francisco, say, hey, let's get together for coffee. Or even if I don't have time for that, I'd say, hey, Richard, I just thought of you because I was, just in San Francisco visiting my daughter. How's it going? So there's a lot of powerful tools Again, all available on the free LinkedIn. If you did want to upgrade, the Sales Navigator is a terrific, has a terrific search capability, and you can get really granular. So you can target companies with a certain size, a certain industry geography. As we go back to face-to-face business, you can, literally target, town by town, zip code by zip code. So that's really, really helpful. In the New York area, in the regular LinkedIn, it's going to give you this area with 12 million people in it, 20 million people, whatever. But with the Sales Navigator, if you have a business that's locally focused, like a restaurant or even a tutoring business, you can really target by micro-targeting. So Sales Navigator is terrific at that. It is not a CRM program, so just to be aware of that. You need to have a way to capture the leads and follow up with them outside of Sales Navigator. And then the other thing we forget is, we all have connections. Many of you have many connections. You can, message people regularly, and messaging is increased. It doesn't have to be just a word message. It can be a photo. You can do a little video. You can send a GIF. That's not my thing, but it is available. And then also you could use the intelligence on LinkedIn. So if you see that a client or a colleague has been with a company for 25 years, you could send them a bottle of wine. So again, think about the information that you have on LinkedIn and what it's giving you and what can you do to leverage that information and make yourself a smarter both marketer, relationship manager, business developer, business owner. And then someone mentioned LinkedIn ads. That's something that's, gradually becoming for smaller businesses. It still, requires a minimum investment, whether it's 3,000 to 5,000, is debatable, but it is something, something to consider for more mature business owners. So just in conclusion, I want you to, and we do have a few minutes for questions, but I want to encourage you. I know there's been a lot of content, not a lot of opportunity to dialogue because it is a large audience, but I hope I've given you some ideas. And so think about what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you want to accomplish in the next 60 days, and then schedule a time each week to work on those action items. And then what I'm going to do, Richard, while you're preparing the questions, I'm just going to bop over to LinkedIn, and I do want to at least show the search. So normally it would just be Richard, Richard Feldman, people are just using it that way. But in fact, this is just hit enter, and all of a sudden there's this whole, search world that just like pops up. Now I'm in people search, and it's going to give me all filters, and I really can do, quite a bit here, searching by a lot of, really useful information. So I wanted to just show that. Okay. Richard, I think we do have questions, right?
Oh, yes, we do. Let me just try to run through a few of these with you.
Okay.
Question, Bruce. How does one go about building a LinkedIn profile if what they do involves 3 different fields? Freelance performing artist, higher ed academic professor, and founder of a nonprofit arts organization.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure if all of those are paid positions, but let's just assume 2 are paid and 1 is a volunteer position. So what I would do is select. It's perfectly okay to have multiple revenue streams on LinkedIn, and people have multiple businesses that they are pursuing. And so I would kind of write a story that tries to weave them together and say my primary focus is XYZ. I also am passionate about ABC, and I have a separate business doing that. And then in my spare time, I really enjoy GDF, and that's my, you'll see that. So it is possible. What I discourage people to do is you should have only like 2 at the most 3 current positions. And then the volunteer experience can be moved to a separate part of the profile so that it's so that people can sort of see the flow more easily.
Okay, Bruce. Question. Some people say that using keywords and headlines is more 2020s than the tagline used in the 2010s. Does one indicate more modern than the other? And how often should we change the headline?
Okay. Well, I guess the second question is easier. I mean, you change. I mean, I recommend looking at one's LinkedIn profile at least once a year. So that would be the time to revisit. In terms of keywords versus, sort of the way I prefer headlines, which is more phrases, I think it's just a preference. So I think that I prefer the story, something that connotes a story. So to me, that's more likely to grab attention. Also, a lot of people that I work with, they are in very specific niches. So people aren't going to be searching, so much for, for example, I don't know why this popped into my head. But anyway, I've had people with very specific biofeedback, kind of specialties. And so they're more likely to grab someone's attention with a really intriguing headline rather than just, biofeedback, science, coach, doctor. To me, it's a little bit, boring.
All right. Our time is just about up, but let's just do 1 or 2 more questions here.
Sure.
Are you okay, Bruce?
I'm okay.
All right. Question. You mentioned posting. If time and resources are limited, would you post on social media versus LinkedIn if your target is to gain corporate attention for a product or service?
Yeah, I mean, if you're targeting other corporations, then LinkedIn should definitely be your one of your priorities for sure. And that's where businesses go to network with other businesses. And while there have been other types of social media that have attempted to make a play at LinkedIn, no one has been fully successful at this point in time.
Okay. Follow up to this is from a gentleman, Glenn Rosenblatt. Follow up to my earlier question on messaging to someone I saw at a virtual conference. If I didn't meet them, but want to connect, is it better to send a connection request or a message? Seems the connection would be harder to get than a message reply.
I mean, everyone's network is a little bit different, but I think that if it's just someone that you saw, I mean, I guess it just depends. I mean, I think that sometimes people report more success with connection requests than they do with in-mails. I mean, in-mails, messages, you want something out of the person. Maybe you're okay just connecting and nurturing over time. So I think you could try either one, but I probably would be more inclined, personally, I'd be more inclined to a connection request.
Okay. There are a number of more questions here, Bruce, but we've run out of time. You said before that if others have a question, they could email you.
Yeah, just email me or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, so that you'll have that information there. I want to thank you all for attending. And Bruce, it was an excellent presentation. We thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.